On April 19, 2023, a strong mid-level trough moving over the southern plains was setting up an environment favorable for severe weather across parts of Texas and Oklahoma. By early afternoon, deepening cumulus towers along the dry line suggested an environment very favorable for the development of tornadic supercells later in the day. And by 4:46, the Storm Prediction Center issued a tornado watch for central Oklahoma. As we head west-southwest out of Norman on Highway 9, you can begin to see the bases of the initial updrafts of the storms going up in central Oklahoma. There are several updrafts clustered together here, and you can begin to make out the beginnings of some supercell characteristics with some of these storms. As we approach the initial storms, we start to run into some of the first anvil precip from the upper level blow-off of the developing storms. We make a play on the first one, but quickly realize our road isn't going to work out, so we start heading north again to catch back up to it, and there's where we run into traffic. So here's the satellite picture. You see those initial updrafts. And then this is the sounding that was launched a couple hours before, and you can see very favorable for supercells, and that environment should continue to get more favorable as we go in through the evening with STP values of 2 to 3. So as we move north, we get back on a better road, and we get our first glimpse of the updraft base of the initial supercell. And as we expect, it's starting to look pretty good. Now I'm just going to let the time-lapse video from the dash cam play here, but you can see the undulating bottom of the updraft there in the top right of the frame. And in the bottom left, with the radar view, you'll start to see that second storm, which initiated further southwest, kind of drift north. And there's a couple different cells in there with that one, but that will eventually become our main supercell. And you can just kind of see the updraft base coming into view. Now, as we're watching the second storm drift north toward us, the initial supercell is actually moving northwest of Norman and into southern Moore. And on the radar presentation, you can see that hook echo kind of developing on the back side. So this storm will go on to produce a weak EF0 tornado over Tinker Air Force Base that a couple of storm chasers capture. Now, as we approach 6:30 p.m. on the radar view, you can really start to see that there are two distinct supercells over central Oklahoma. The initial storm to the north of Norman, and now the second storm, which we are viewing the base of to the southwest over Chickasha. Now, this southern storm is continuing to look better and better, both visually and on radar, taking on that classic kidney bean appearance that most supercells have. And we can see the initial mesocyclone starting to drift north and approach us as it comes out of the haze there to the southwest. And there we go, we start to get our first glimpse of the true discrete updraft that the supercell is presenting as it comes out of the rain and haze to the southwest. It's a real barber pole. You can see the individual striations, and looking at the motion in the time lapse, you can see how that mesocyclone is rotating through. Also interesting to note, there's a third storm kind of developing on the backside of this that's actually merging with the storm that we're sitting underneath right now, and you can see the base of that off to the center right of the screen. Some of the precip starts to fill in, but you get this beautiful barber pole shaped updraft, kind of UFO flying saucer type updraft. So this is exactly what we want to see as storm chasers. Now, as we continue to sit underneath the storm, it continues to approach us and strengthen as it does so. And so, underneath the updraft, we decide to reposition, heading east-northeast back towards Highway 9. And we drive underneath the old updraft there. As things really start to ramp up on the radar presentation, you can see that hook echo developing as those two storms merged. That's the beginning of the dominant supercell that's going to produce all the tornadoes in central Oklahoma. So here we're heading north on US 62 again. We pull over and we are treated with this view. Repositioning further east now on Highway 9 to stay ahead of the storm. We're driving through some of the hills when we get our first view of the mesocyclone as it's done with the storm merger. So, going up and down some of these hills, there's our first view of the developing tornado. And on the radar presentation, you can see those greens next to the red. That is the Doppler velocity indicating that we have a strong tornado developing. And then as we switch over to the debris or the correlation coefficient, you can see that little hole there. That is debris being lofted by the tornado. So we're going to keep repositioning south, and then as we head east, we get our first view of the tornado right there in the center of the screen, underneath that rotating mesocyclone. And the tornado continues to increase in size and drift slowly to our right, so we know the tornado is going to pass to our north, but we get to watch it, and here's a nice treat. As we move east, we lose visual on the tornado as it quickly becomes wrapped in rain, and we realize that our road options are running pretty thin since we're west of I-35. We reposition east again, crossing the interstate, but realize that our road is actually closed off. And that's when we catch our second tornado of the day, a little needle there right there in the picture, and a second tornado embedded in the rain. So with our road options running thin, we decide we're going to have to hook slice this storm on I-35, and that's exactly what we do. moving south off of I-35. We make it down to Purcell where we exit the interstate. We actually run into a couple of streetlights that get knocked out because of the loss of power from the tornado to the north. But everything's all good. We're able to make it to our east option, cross the South Canadian River, and get east of Purcell before moving back north towards the storm. By now, the storm's moving away from the city, but it's starting to move towards Shawnee and Seminole and those areas farther east of Norman. It's starting to get dark, and we're treated with a really awesome light show in the next couple of minutes. As we're sitting there watching the lightning, we notice the storm on radar is actually starting to look pretty good again. After producing the tornadoes north of Purcell, the storm had cycled a little bit and it had gone down in intensity. But sure enough, the hook has started to come back, and we have a really nice little pendant-shaped appendage on the backside of that storm, indicating really strong rotation. And as we're sitting there watching the lightning, we can actually see the wall cloud hanging out underneath there, illuminated by occasional lightning strikes, but we can't confirm any tornadoes just yet.
Power flash!
So as we're sitting there, we actually catch the power flash from the beginning of the Etowah tornado, and there you can see it illuminated by lightning a little bit better. Big tornado hanging out underneath the storm. It's rated EF2, and you can see the radar presentation looks really good as well. So now things are starting to get really electrified with the sun going down. You've got a beautiful supercell with just a ton of lightning, and I think I'm just going to let the next couple of time lapses play so you can see how awesome that lightning was. And finally, wrapping up some of the other time-lapse shots from my other cameras, you can really see the lightning and the supercell just spinning away there. Overall, there were 22 tornado reports and a lot of large hail in central Oklahoma. 18 tornadoes were actually found, and I helped with some of the surveys there. So, as we wrap up the video, I just want to say thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.